Member for Nanaimo Ladysmith.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to speak to Bill 233, an act to amend the Export and Import Permits Act. In presenting this bill, my honourable colleague from Vancouver East has argued that Canada must ensure our domestic laws live up to our commitments under the Arms Trade Treaty, or ATT. She's raised serious concerns that are worthy of thoughtful consideration. Indeed, I believe that all members across this House share the fundamental goals behind Bill C-233, making sure that Canada acts responsibly on the global stage, ensuring that our exports reflect Canadian values, and aligning our policies with both international law and humanitarian principles. The question before us today, therefore, is not whether those goals are worthwhile, because they clearly are, but whether Bill C-233, as drafted, is the best way to achieve them. I've followed the debate on this bill closely and want to thank colleagues from all parties for their contributions to the legislative record. Their remarks have been well researched and their arguments have shaped my own positions on this bill, which does not actually target any particular country or conflict, but seeks to constrain Canadian policy and practice across the board. Because of that breadth, it's crucial for us to think carefully and practically about the impact that passing this bill would have on our sovereignty and our security, on our global relationships, and we must be vigilant about avoiding unintended consequences. Because the New World Order that the Prime Minister is fond of speaking of is a complex and dangerous place. And getting that balance right matters if Canada is going to realize its potential as a leading middle power, especially in the context of our geographic location, our obligations to NATO and our other allies, and our international commitments. In determining whether Canada's export approach should change, as proposed by Bill 233, then, we must first examine and evaluate the strength of Canada's existing export control regime. In my preparation and research for these remarks, I was pleased to learn that Canada already has one of the most stringent systems in the world for regulating the export of military goods and technology, and that our standards not only meet those set out in the ATT, but in many respects exceed them. In his detailed speech explaining why the Liberal government will not be supporting this bill, the Parliamentary Secretary for Foreign Affairs explained that Canada's export control system already places human rights considerations at its very core, and that Canada has gone above and beyond the requirements of the Arms Trade Treaty. Canada already applies exemptions more narrowly than any other ATT signatory. We control a wider range of items than the treaty requires, including dual-use goods and nuclear, chemical, biological, and missile technologies. Canada imposes stricter denial criteria than those specified under the ATT, including risks of contributing to transnational violence, terrorism, and organizing crime. Canada also already has and enforces strict controls on Canadians involved in transfers of military goods abroad, even when those goods never actually enter Canada. So, Madam Speaker, there is a measure of transparency already in place, in the sense that the government has been tabling annual reports to Parliament on exports governed by the ATT since the 1990s, even before the treaty was ratified. As an issue as this important should be, our approach to Canadian military exports has been serious and largely nonpartisan. To verify these assertions, I reviewed some of the government's recent reports, which are available to the public on the Global Affairs Canada website. Current law and practice require Global Affairs Canada to assess whether proposed exports would contribute to peace and security or undermine it, and whether they could facilitate serious violations of international humanitarian law. I was encouraged to see that export permits are not rubber-stamped. Applications have been denied, suspended, or cancelled on occasion according to the established criteria. However, our analysis of this bill and its potential should not stop there. Every system can be improved, so we must also consider the broader economic and strategic context in which Canada operates. Our defence sector is deeply integrated with those of our closest allies. A significant portion of Canadian defence exports consists not of finished systems, but of components and specialized technology specialized technologies that form part of multinational supply chains. This integrated industrial base supports thousands of highly skilled jobs across our country, enabling Canada to collaborate with partners who share our values in areas ranging from aerospace engineering to advanced manufacturing. During debate, both the Parliamentary Secretary for the Government and the Shadow Minister for Foreign Affairs, along with numerous other speakers with expertise in defence and international relations, have warned that Bill C-233 could have significant unintended consequences for that cooperation at a critical moment for global security. They argued, and I agree from my own experience in international affairs, that the exemptions within the current regime are not loopholes, but rather necessary pathways for cooperation grounded in shared security commitments, continental defense, and decades of military integration. My colleagues have warned that this legislation could disrupt defense cooperation, strain alliances, and ultimately make Canada less secure. They have cautioned that this legislation has the potential to reshape an entire industrial sector, and that those changes could place Canadian suppliers at a competitive disadvantage and hinder Canada's ability to support crucial international partners who are under threat at a critical time. These concerns are not mere hypotheticals in the current international landscape. Canada's export policies operate within a broader framework of alliances, trade relationships, and cooperative defense arrangements. Prudence requires that we approach changes to these relationships with care and a clear understanding of the downstream effects. We must consider how this bill could affect Canada's credibility as a reliable participant in joint industrial and security initiatives. Now, legislation always produces some consequences beyond its stated objectives. Even well-intentioned measures can have unintended side effects in sectors as interconnected and technologically complex as defense manufacturing. During debate, a member of the Bloc Québécois made an observation that captures the nuance required here. While acknowledging the motivations behind this bill, he argued that the goal of stronger oversight does not automatically mean that every proposed mechanism for achieving it will work. And this, Madam Speaker, this is where Bill C-233 falls short. It attempts to address legitimate concerns, but it does so through sweeping legislative changes that could unintentionally disrupt economic stability, industrial cooperation, and strategic partnerships. Rather than rewriting the law in ways that could destabilize existing arrangements, we should take the more balanced path of improving transparency, enhancing reporting requirements, and strengthening oversight within the current framework. GAC could expand the detail of annual export reports. We could improve parliamentary review of export decisions, or invest in additional monitoring of supply chains, addressing concerns about accountability while avoiding unnecessary economic or diplomatic disruption through broad changes in law. We must weigh the moral aspirations behind the proposal against its practical consequences. We must ask not only whether a bill reflects our values, but whether it will function effectively in the real world. In the case of Bill 233, Madam Speaker, that balance has not been achieved. The mechanisms proposed raise significant concerns about economic stability, industrial cooperation, and international partnerships. Let us commit to continue the conversation about how Canada can strengthen oversight, improve transparency, and uphold the highest standards of responsibility in our export policies, while preserving the partnerships, jobs, and institutions that Canadians depend on. Thank you, Madam Speaker.